Phoebe from Girlybunches, and in this week's video I'm going to have a little bit of a different type of video. I'm going to sort of chat through a very common question that I'm asked, and the question is how many chains will I need to do a project? Well, unfortunately I can't answer that question, and I'm not sure too many people would be able to. The only way we'd be able to answer that question is if we knew specifically what yarn you're using, what size hook you're using, the exact size of your project that you need, and has that pattern been worked out already. So there's so many variables. So I've done a video on tension, and that covers different sized hooks and different sized yarns, so do check that video out. I should put a link up here to that. And that really does affect your style of crochet. If I use this 4mm hook and I use some double knit yarn, which is what I normally use, if I did a project in this, it might come out a completely different size to that if my mum did it, because my mum has a different tension to me. What I would recommend, and if I was, for example, going to cover my iPad, what I would do, I would start sort of measuring out this across. I'd be looking for the ideal width, but what I would do is I would start working some chains, and that way I can see roughly, if I can get this to focus, what size I'm aiming for. So that isn't necessarily going to be what I need, because if you've ever knitted before, you'll know that once you cast on a few stitches and then start working them, your work suddenly becomes a lot bigger because you work the stitches, it evens things out and can make things, you know, get quite out of proportion to what you're expecting. So if I start off with some chains, and I can see there that that's not enough, so I'm going to do a few more. Now I'm not really sure how many I'm going to need, so this is what I'm showing you. This is the way I try and work out a size of something. I have no idea how many I need. All I do know is that for my pattern I need a multiple of 3 for the base chain plus 2, because I'm going to do this waffle stitch, which I've shown in a previous video. So if you want to check that out, how to do that, I've got a video I shall link up here. So all I know is I need a multiple of 3 plus 2 stitches. So I'm not counting these, and I have a bit of a problem. I love to count things, but this base chain I don't. I'm not going to get myself into a mess about it. I'm not going to worry about it. Right, I've done way too many there now. So I'm going to take my hook out, I'm going to undo some, and I'm going to measure it back up against this. So I'm getting closer, getting a bit closer there again. I'm going to stretch that out a bit, because by the time I've put the hook through and worked a stitch, that's going to pad out a bit more. So I'm going to pull it ever so slightly, not much. I don't want to like put it like that, that's too much, but I'm just going to put it ever so gently out a bit. I'm getting closer, getting closer. I'm going to take a few more off. Okay, right, I think that might be a little bit too wide, but let's just see. I don't know how many I've got on there, and as I said, I do need to know. I know I need a multiple of 3 plus 2. So I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. So now I'm going to start working my stitch. I'm going to speed this up so it's not utterly boring. So this is basically how I will try and work out the size of my first chain, my chain length. I've got no idea if I've got this right. I'm not going to know until I've done a couple of rows. The first row sort of evens things out a bit, but you could still be, when you've done the second row of your pattern, it could get tighter. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily assume that I've got this right after the first row. And if you want to make something that is custom made, you know, as in you're not working to a pattern, then this unfortunately is how you have to do it. Right. So I've done that now, and I've stopped short of 2 stitches because, like I said, I needed to have a chain length which was multiple of 3 plus 2. So that I've counted these, and I've got to 26 there. So 24 being my multiple of 3 plus 2 was 26, so I stopped there, so 28. So as you can see, it just about goes round, and I'm not, I'm not prepared to think that I've got to my finishing number. I know that I'm probably going to have to work a couple of rows before I can work that out. So it's looking a little bit on the short side, but we've learnt something already. We've learnt that I did 28 stitches, which looked about right, but once I've put in my trebles, it's brought that up a bit, and I needed maybe a few more just to kind of get that to be the right length, because I thought that that was probably a bit too big, didn't I? But now I'm looking at it and thinking, no, I probably needed a few more. But I'm going to do the next row just to see if that makes any difference, and I shall come back when I've done the next row. Right, so there we go, I've done my second row, and actually, you know what, I think I'm alright. I think that's going to be okay, because if I lift that up, we can see it's pulling it a little bit, but we don't want it to be too loose because we want it to be a nice firm fit. So that comes around nicely, and I'm going to make this a length, and we're going to sew these two ends to get these edges together to make like a pocket. And I think that looks great actually. I think I'm spot on there now. So it really is just a bit of trial and error, and I know that's quite frustrating if you want to get on and make a project, but making something your own way does take a little bit of work and effort, and that effort is working it out at the beginning. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. Okay, it costs you a bit of time, but unless you've got a deadline that's sort of flying towards you, then this is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be relaxing, and you can definitely enjoy this, but it's worth getting right. Now, I'm not going to go back and worry about this, because this I can sew in. When I'm sewing the edges together, I can sew that in. Even if I wasn't sewing the edges together, you can even, I've done a video on this, you can undo this knot and work it back to the place you want it to do, and I'll put a link to that video because it is a great little tip. So please don't be afraid about tail ends like this. No matter how long they are, it really doesn't matter. That is not worth starting your project again for. It really isn't. And I think I'm happy with that. So another method of working out how many stitches you're going to need. So if I just I'm going to undo that. She says, I'm going to undo it. I know how many I need now. See, I've worked it out. I'm going to undo this. So say you're going to do a blanket. Do a row of stitches, the kind of the first couple of rows of the blanket, but don't do as many. Just do a little sample size like this. Once you've done a couple of rows, measure how many stitches you get. So don't kind of go up to this edge part and measure like that way. Let me just zoom in. Don't go up to the edge and measure an inch from there and count them. Go into the middle of your work where everything's nicely evened out, and just take a measurement of how many stitches it takes for you to make an inch worth of work. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So roughly, if I wanted my blanket to be 40 inches, then I would multiply that by 4, because that's how many stitches. So that kind of gives you a rough idea as well. Same way if you want to work, how long do I want something to be, then sort of measure it. Put your tape measure down and go, right, well that's taken 2 rows to get me 2 inches worth of work, So there's that way of doing it as well. And honestly, I've started projects over and over and over again. I honestly have, just so that I could get the size that I wanted. It isn't always easy, and it isn't always fun. I have to admit, but it's worth the perseverance, I think. So I hope this kind of helps, where you see how I've worked things out. I kind of do things and I go, right, I think that might be right, but I'm prepared to go back and undo this and start again if I need to. But I haven't committed myself by doing different colours and stuff. I've just worked it in the same colour, done a few rounds, done a few rows, just to work it out, and it is worth it in the end. So I really hope that this kind of helps you. I'd love a thumbs up, and do let me know if you've got any questions or queries or something else that I might be able to help you with. I always try my best to help out you, but otherwise I will be back next week with my tutorials, which I hope you find fun as well as helpful, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Hi everyone, it's Olivia from Girlybunches. Hope you're all well. I'm doing a little vlog video this week. It's Father's Day in the UK,